Guys, I'm going to be doing this, Amir Hashem. This is going to be called, I'm going to try to do this every week. This is called the Parsha Review. And it's going to be 3 or 4 pages each week. I'm going to try to 3 or 4 pages of just main ideas that some of which we'll have spoken about in the Parsha Shir and some of which we haven't. But there's going to be about, different ideas that very simple, very, very to the point with what do you call it? So this will be available. Anybody wants to buy it, if there's anybody who wants to purchase it, the Parsha Review, anybody watches the Parsha, so it's $8. And you can PayPal me $8 and I'll send it to you. Just make sure you send me your address, your email address. And of course, we still have the Shidduch investigation questions for parents, for people who are in the Shidduchim and are looking through, people who have trouble getting information. So I put together a list. There are about 48 questions here and a few other guidelines for parents who are embarking in Shidduchim. Somebody asked me about it today, and I was telling them, the types of questions. Because people like, do you see him down the line as somebody who will be in Kodesh, or is he somebody who will learn and then go to work? Does he have a lot of friends, or a few, or is he a total loner? So these are all questions that parents struggle with this. So anybody who's interested in this, you can also, it's $12. You can email me. I'll be glad to send it to you. Okay, we're on Parshas Kedoshim. Now, here we have a fundamental principle in the Torah that is actually a machlokas between Rashi and the Ramban, which is not the first time they argue, by the way. Rashi and the Ramban have plenty of machlokases. But the Torah says like this, Daber Hashem el Moshe Lemor, page 656. Daber el kol hadas b'nei Yisrael. Turn it off for 1 second, Israel. Turn off the thing for 1 second. Good. So Daber el kol hadas b'nei Yisrael v'amarta alehem kedoshim to you, ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Speak to the Jewish people and tell them, you shall be kadosh, for I am kadosh, I Hashem your God is kadosh. I don't like the English word, the standard English translation for kedusha is holiness. That's how they translate it, to be holy. I don't like the translation because holy has a certain connotation of, kedusha by us really means self-control. That's kedusha. My father, Olav Shalom, used to say, if somebody asks you, if somebody, let's say you meet a friend of yours, doesn't know anything about Torah, and he's curious, what's Torah about? Give me a summary. Torah is about Hashem, and Torah is about dedication, and Torah is about being good to people. All true. If somebody were to ask you, sum up Torah in 1 sentence, what would you say? What is Torah about? What's the main theme of Torah? So that's, be good. That includes even to Hashem. That's true. It's all true. It's all true. If you think about it in our terms, rules, true. Self-control. That's what the Torah is. It's all about self-control. You have to control what you eat, what you think about, what you talk, what you look at, your ego, your selfishness. Sorry, it's all about self-control. The entire Torah is self-control. That's how I like to control. Kedusha means separation. Really, Kedusha, when you say to a woman, when you get married, you say, Harei at mikudeshes li. The Gemara says, what does that mean, mikudeshes li? Harei at mikudeshes li. Why don't you just say, hey, you're going to serve me now? Which, by the way, isn't exactly what happens. It's exactly the reverse. But they say first you date. Then, after you're married, you intimidate, or get intimidated. But at the end of the day, the word Harat Mekudeshes Li means that it has a double meaning. You are separated from other men and totally under my jurisdiction. You're prohibited to all other men. That's what Kedusha means. You're separated. It also uses the word Kedusha to teach us that a Jewish marriage is at a level of Kedusha, a level of holiness. But as I say, the word holy, I'm holy. There's a certain almost, I hate to use the word, but Christian connotation. He's the holy man. The holy man. Yeah, we know how holy they are. Right? And he's the holy man. Yeah, he's wholly corrupt. That's what he is. But he's the holy man. So I like to use the word self-control. Now, Rashi says over here, take a look at Rashi. Kedoshim to you, it's the second line. Rashi says, Hevu perushim min ha'aroyos. Separate yourself from immorality. Umin ha'avera. Sin of immorality. Shekol makom she'ata motzei geder erva ata motzei kedusha. Where you find fences in the area of morality, where you find separation, that's where you're going to find holiness. And then he gives examples. So Rashi uses an approach over here that Kedusha is related to self-control, specifically in the area of immorality. And that's why you see that in the Torah world, where Rashi says you put up a fence. You see that in the Torah world, there's a tremendous focus on keeping the genders separate. So it's our starting position. Keep them separate. And it starts in school. At the earliest age, the kids do not learn together. Boys and girls are completely different classes. And in certain Hasidic groups, even families, the men and women eat at different tables. I know a young man who's belongs to a certain Hasidic group, and the Pesach Seder, they have a mechitza in the room for the men and the women. Okay, so people from the outside we're critical, and then you get all these Westerners and liberals who laugh at us, right? They laugh, except they're the ones whose daughters are getting abortions. So you can laugh. They're the ones whose daughters are clinically depressed because they're being used and abused in universities. So you can laugh, but at the end of the day, who laughs best? So we understand, because they say, what, you know, even a guy, what's his name, the guy who was Trump's vice president, Mike Pence. Do you know that Mike Pence would not be alone in a room with a woman, and he's only in a room if his wife is present? How do you like that? We have something called yichud. You're not allowed to be alone behind a locked door with a woman, or in a secluded area with a woman who is not your mother, wife, or daughter, or grandmother. Why? Because we recognize the vulnerability. We're not embarrassed to say it. We recognize the vulnerability. Even a goy, Mike Pence, recognizes that. Something that's common sense. So you have, even at the time of the Beis HaMikdash, do you know that they made a separate balcony for the women at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva? Why? At the Beis HaMikdash? At the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, where there's Kedusha and holiness and Ruach HaKodesh. And they had to make a separate balcony because, they're what do you call it? There was mixing. There was what do you call it? There was social mixing over there in potential misbehavior. And the Torah goes about it all the time. The Gemara says the most vulnerable time of the year are the holidays. Sak v'neshata rigla. The most vulnerable, Gemara says that the most vulnerable time are the holidays. Because then people together, and even tashlich, the irony of ironies, tashlich on Rosh Hashanah, where people go out to the river to throw away their sins. What happens at tashlich is a big communal social event. So then you got more sins to throw away. So we reckon we're not afraid to embarrass. We're not embarrassed we know what's true. So Rashi says that's what Kedoshim to you is. The Ramban says no, it's not limited to rise. The Ramban says Kadesh atzmecha b'muter lach. The Ramban says, and this is a famous expression. Excuse me one second. The Ramban says Kadesh atzmecha b'muter lach means that there's a mistake. People think that there 613 mitzvos, or are there 613 problems? Well, we got a problem with milk and meat. Baruch Hashem, we took care of the problem. Because now you could have a parva hamburger with dairy cheese. Baruch Hashem, we've taken care of the problem of cheeseburgers. You could have a parva hamburger, the Impossible Burger with dairy cheese. You could have a cheese, or you could have a beef burger with parva cheese. Baruch Hashem, we've taken care of the problem of burgers. We've taken care of that problem. Okay, now let's take care of the problem of shetels. Right, you got to take care of it. Oh, women have to cover their hair. Yeah, but I don't want to walk around wearing some sort of shmata on my head. So put on a sheitel. Yeah, but the old days the sheitels looked like the theoretical possibility of matter without form. So now we've got shaitels that they look designer hair, designer shaitel, design. Baruch Hashem, took care of the problem of shaitels. And now kosher food. I'm a guy who likes what do they call it now? A foodie. I'm a foodie. What you call a foodie, we call a glutton. Right? Baruch Hashem, I got all the food that I want that's available to me. I got the Torah. That's what's called a novel birshus Torah. You're a glutton with Torah sanction. That means I could unleash all of my passions and all of my desires. Man could live with his wife as often as he wants, as long as she's kosher and she's not in need. He could unpay all of his passions. As Ramban says, and you're missing the boat over here. That's not what the Torah wants. It wasn't meant, the Torah is not just an obstacle course. Get through the obstacle course of prohibitions and unleash to the contrary. Then you miss the whole point of the Torah. Yeah, you're right. You haven't done anything, technically you haven't done anything wrong. But you're all wrong. You missed the whole point. I missed the entire point over here. I missed the entire point. You know what it's like? You're not going to believe this. I had a guy once said to me, the guy was, he was a little older when he got married. He was, I think, in his 40s. So I met this guy once, and he says to me, Rabbi Kaplan, I just don't get women. I just don't get it. What's the problem? He said he came home, it was Hanukkah, and his wife got upset because he didn't buy her a Hanukkah card. She didn't buy him a Hanukkah. So his wife was upset. So he left the house, and he went to the store to see if he could find her a Hanukkah card. The stores were closed. So he came home, and he took she had last year's Hanukkah card, and he scratched out the date, and he wrote the new date on it, and he gave her that Hanukkah card. Oh, was she upset? He said, she was so upset, I just don't get them. That means you missed the entire point here. You just missed the entire point. You didn't get it from start to finish. You just missed the whole thing. It just went right past you. You understand? It just went right past you. See, he was bewildered. I could just imagine. His wife must have been ready to either throw him out the window or to jump out the window herself, or maybe both go together. I'm not sure. That means you just didn't get it. That means you just didn't get it. Turn it off for 1 second. Don't tell. It'll be our little secret. So, okay, in any event, so that's a novel birshus Torah. That means the guy who behaves, that's what the Ramban says. The Ramban says the guy who behaves that way, you've missed the whole point. Say, he and Rashi says this is specifically referring to Mored. Ramban says it's the overall theme of the Torah. The Torah is saying, Kedoshim to you. That's why I said to you, the word Kedoshim is separate, self-control. That's why I say holy. We don't think of it in terms of holiness. Number one. Number two, notice that it says over here, Daber el kol adas b'nei Yisrael. Now take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Daber el kol adas b'nei Yisrael. It's the first Rashi. Milamed. How's the Rashi reading, Israel? How's Rashi, the Rashi letters? Getting better? Huh?
Where, Rabbi?
Top Rashi, the first Rashi, right column, top Rashi.
The right column?
Right column, top Rashi. Daber el kol adas b'nei Yisrael. Okay. Milamed. Milamed. Shenamra. Parsha. Zu bihikohel. Yeah, listen, I got news for you. A month ago you couldn't read that. So don't tell me you didn't improve. So what do you call it? The Rashi says, why does the Torah begin over here with speak to all of the congregation of Israel? It teaches you this Parsha was said in a group. Mipnei sherov gufei Torah tluyin ba, because many concepts of the Torah, rov means the majority of the concepts of the Torah are dependent on this Parsha. That means this Parsha, in Parshas Kedoshim, by the way, there are 3 Parshas in the Torah that have the most mitzvahs in them. Specific mitzvahs that command. There's Parshas Mishpatim in the book of Shmos. There's Parshas Kedoshim over here, and there's Parshas Kiseitze in the book of Devarim. That have, each one has, these are the Parshas that have the most specific mitzvahs that are in them. Parshas Kedoshim has a lot of very, very specific mitzvahs that we're going to see listed in the Parsha. So the Pashat meaning over here is Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu says, speak to the entire Jewish people because to get all the people together, because there's a lot of information here they got to know. That's one of the ideas here. Okay? Now, you'll notice the Mefarshim say, the Mefarshim go somewhere else with this completely. Why speak to all the Jewish people? So that no one could come along and say the concept of Kedusha, holiness, doesn't apply to me. Maybe it applies to you, and it applies to you, applies to you. I'm not a guy who could get to Kedusha. Nobody could come along and say that. Nobody could come along. Baruch, why were you smiling before, by the way? Why did you say you were going to say something? Well, we're talking about the guy with, I forgot what it was, the guy with the card. I think you were smiling. Were you going to say something?
No, but I had a thought about something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, do I need to intervene?
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
So I was thinking about that most of the times, in terms of like severity of punishment, or like the examples are always like either like marital stuff or then idols.
Immorality,
Immorality.
and idol worship. Those are the two out of the three biggest averas. The other one is murder.
And I guess like keeping kosher, like those are the most examples.
It's one level down.
Yeah.
Keeping kosher is not punishable by death. If a guy eats pork, it's not. It's not only it's not punishable by death. Eating non-kosher food isn't even premature death.
So I was thinking, are those the three set most struggles what people have, or like we have, or like what
Good.
did I mention?
Good. In the old days, immorality and idol worship were the ones that people had the most trouble with. There was a tremendous Yetzer Hara. There was a drive for idol worship, which we can't relate to because it was removed. The men of the Great Assembly, when they saw that people, when you read in Nach about the Jewish kings who sinned, Yeravam ben Nevat and Achav and all these other kings, and you read the Nach and it looks like, what, these guys just like a bunch of gang members? You know, it weren't. They knew Shas and Poskim. But they got involved in idol worship because there was a tremendous drive for idol worship. And we can't relate to it because the men of the Great Assembly, when they saw that the Jewish people had so many idol worship casualties, they davened to Hashem that idol Yetzer Hara should be removed. The Gemara says that they davened and a fiery lion came out of the Holy of Holies. They said, that's it. That was the Yetzer Hara of idol worship. That was removed. If you want some sort of idea of what that drive was, think about the drive, the difficulty we have today with immorality. It's a tremendous drive. People struggle with it all the time. That was even more the struggle with idol worship. You know, sometimes I tell people, you know, what's heroin like? Go explain to somebody what's heroin like. Explaining colors to a blind man. How can you explain what heroin is like? You have to experience it. Yeah, somebody who's never been drunk can't understand why people would drink. You just look like you're an absolute imbecile when you're drunk. Yeah, that's only because you haven't experienced. You haven't experienced taking a couple of shots. Take a couple of shots, and you'll know why we got to this point. See, how can you explain it to them? You can't explain the feeling to somebody. That's how far we were removed from idol worship. That's how far removed we are. If I told you, imagine, let's go back 250 years. Take a smart person from 250 years ago. My example is always Ben Franklin. Hey, you know, he had those smart-looking glasses. You know, he looked smart. And even more, he got himself onto a $100 bill. How smart? I mean, that's as smart as you could get onto a $100 bill. So Ben Franklin, imagine you would have told Ben, you've heard of Ben Franklin? Yeah. Okay. So Ben Franklin, imagine you would have told him, hey, Ben, in 200 years, there's going to be a box, and this box is going to project images, and it's going to dominate entire families, people, and societies, and it's going to be the single most powerful force that's ever been unleashed in the world to sidetrack people from doing anything productive. So anybody in our lifetime, certainly when I was nowadays there are other things, right? In my lifetime it was television. And if you would have told intelligent people even 50 years ago that one day there's going to be a little box like this that you could take anywhere and bring the entire world, we would have thought you're crazy. What are you talking about? Not unimaginable. Only 50 years ago. 50 years ago, nobody could have imagined a smartphone. And 250 years ago, nobody could have imagined the television. That's how far we removed from understanding what idol worship was. It wasn't just some, I talk about Buddha. Buddha's I always call him the little fat guy who can't afford a shirt, and the people are worshiping him. That's Buddha. There was much more to it. It was a drive. It was an addiction. They were addicted to it. That's how powerful it was. So we can't possibly. So yes, idol worship and immorality were the two main stumbling blocks. Murder. It wasn't the sort of thing, let's go kill someone. There wasn't like that or some pizza. It wasn't, murder wasn't a drive, but it's the only thing that it's such a, the ultimate in inconsideration, call it that. It's very inconsiderate to kill other people. It takes up a lot of their time too. So those are the three, yeah. Okay, now. Here, the Torah says, number one, we're talking to everybody. Nobody could say that this doesn't apply to me. It applies to everybody. Everybody is possible. Everybody could get to a level of self-control. Nobody could say, I'm out. That's why the Torah says, Dabrel kol hadas b'nei Yisrael. How much, that's why I don't like the word holy. Because if you think of myself, in terms of, I'm getting holier, I'm not a holy guy. I know holy, I'm not holy. That's not part of my lexicon. Can I grow in self-control? Can you grow in self-control? Yes. Nobody can say I can't grow in self-control. Work on it. It's not hard. It's not easy, but work on it. Nobody can say, no, I'm out. It's like they say nowadays, I have anger. That's a new expression. I have anger. Oh, shkoyach. You're the first guy in history who wants to get angry, huh? You're the only person in the world. I have anger. He has anger issues. Anger issues. He's a human being. Work on it. He has anger issues. Who doesn't have anger issues? If you have teenagers in the house, you're going to have anger issues. I just talked to a guy, he says to me, he's telling me about, I haven't seen a guy in a long time. So he's telling about his family. He tells me about, he's got his 10th grader. He says, she's responsible for 85% of my stress in life. Shkoyach. You're not the first guy who has teenagers. You're not the first guy who's married. You're not the first guy who got stuck in traffic on a hot day when you're late for your main business appointment. Yeah, everybody's got anger. I have anger. Work on it like the rest of us. You have to work on it. That's what the Torah is telling you, number one. Number two, the Torah is telling you, let's take a look at the Catholics, the Christians. Let's look at the Goyim for a second. By the Catholics, who's holy?
Priest.
Right. The priests are holy by them. And what are the rules for the priests?
You're removed from the society.
Total removal from any of the physical pleasures of the world. That makes you holy. That means everybody else can behave like animals. Nothing else is required of us. Because we are, if the physical is by definition contaminated, so that means everybody's contaminated, and only one group of people who are in the church nipping away at alcohol, right? Only one group of people, so they're the holy people. So everybody else could behave like savages. Could do anything. You can behave like reptiles. Do anything you want. That's the mistake. That's why I say it has not holiness. Physical world is holy. That is holy. Eating cholent on Shabbos is kedusha. Taking no prisoners of cholent, that's not kedusha. Having a helping of cholent is kedusha. Having a second helping of kedusha. Going on 4 and 5 is already the Ramban's. Maybe we could apply some self-guide. Listen, I like cholent as much as the next guy. They also, there are those moments of, they bring out a lemon meringue pie. One piece of pie is Oneg Shabbos. 2 pieces of lemon meringue pie is certainly Oneg Shabbos. Conquering the entire pie, that's already, that's a different category. That's already a different category. So that's what the Torah is telling you. We could all get there, and we all have to work on it. Now, you said, Azriel, the priests, what happens? They're isolated. So there's a mistake the world makes over here. Remember what Rashi said? This Parsha was said Behi Kohel, that top line of Rashi. Melamed Nemra Parsha Zu Behi Kohel. This Parsha was said in a big group, a big gathering of people. Why does the Torah emphasize this? So phenomenal, from one of the Parsha, phenomenal approach here. I had a guy here once at Ohr Somayach. That's one of the benefits of teaching at Ohr Somayach. You meet all sorts of people. So this guy was heavily into meditation. And he told me that when he graduated college, his graduation gift from his parents, now you're not going to believe this. I mean, I knew the guy. The guy was in my share. The guy, and he was more or less, he was pretty much a stable guy. And so he was explaining to me about meditation and what a high you get. See, this is again, Baruch, like idol worship. A high from meditation, what you call meditation, I call sleeping. But there's apparently something to it. The guy told me his graduation gift from his parents, he rented a cabin somewhere in the backwoods of Virginia, all alone, out in the woods, by himself for 3 months. Once a day, he called his parents up, and he'd say, I'm okay, everything's okay, and that was it. Complete cut off, right? Supplied himself for 3 months worth of stuff. Complete cut off from society. He told me that he'd started out by meditating like 3 hours a day, then he built it up to 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, and eventually he was meditating 12 hours a day. One thing I can tell you about the guy, he wasn't ADHD, that I can tell you. The guy, even in Shir, he had very good concentration. When we learned, this guy could concentrate. He told me he meditated 12 hours a day. He said it was an unbelievable ecstatic experience. 3 months he did it. In the backwoods, alone in a cabin in Virginia. I can't imagine. Most people can't sit alone for 5 minutes without turning on some sort of TV or box or something. So some people think Kedusha is separating yourself. That's what you said earlier about the priests. They're separate. Kedusha means separate. The Torah is teaching you Parsha zu namra bihi kohel. This was said in the group. To the contrary, we're meant to be functioning in society. We're meant to. What's funny? What's funny?
I'll ask you the question later after Shir, not related to the Parsha.
Okay. Well, we're meant to be functioning in society. That's part of Kedusha. Do you know that the Chafetz Chaim, the Chazon Ish, you've heard of the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish, the reason he's called the Chazon Ish is because he wrote his set of Svarim on Halacha was called Chazon Ish. Now, the Chazon Ish was a relative unknown in Vilna. He lived in Vilna until he was in his 50s. Very few people knew who he was. Reb Chaim Ozer, who was the Gadol Hador, he knew who he was. Very few people knew about him. There was once a meeting, him and the Chafetz Chaim, they met. All he did, the Chazon Ish, virtually sat alone. He had no position, he occupied no position. He sat alone in a room and he studied Torah. He met once with the Chafetz Chaim, and the Chafetz Chaim said to him, it's no trick to be alone in a room and be holy and achieve and learn Torah. That's no trick. The trick is when you're involved with people. And then eventually the Chazon Ish came to Israel. The last 20 years of his life he was in Eretz Yisrael, and he was the leader of Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael for the last 20 years of his life. But there are often in life you have this, you need a little bit of both. You need to be alone and isolated in order to study Torah. But the goal isn't to just live alone by yourself. The goal is that then you're a contributing member of Klal Yisrael. So that's why it says, Bihi Kohel, the Torah, this Parsha was taught Bihi Kohel, so that people shouldn't think that the goal of Judaism is to be some sort of hermit who lives off on a mountain ledge somewhere in Tibet, where you never see anybody and all you do is eat rice and walk around in a loincloth and sleep on beds of nails. That's not the goal of the Torah. The goal of the Torah is to be a normal functioning member of society, and still, in spite of that, to reach levels of Kedusha. That's the trick. That's the trick. Go ahead. There you go. Let it go. Let it go, because you're smiling. I'm curious as anything.
I like a question. You are the driver of the ambulance. You have 5 minutes to deliver the patient to the hospital. In front of you, there is a group of Hasidic guys protesting against the tram station.
I don't know.
And they don't let the way.
Okay, it doesn't have to be a group of Hasidic guys, but it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question about what you know. You want to hear a more serious question? And this really came up as a question. Imagine that you see the terrorists who are flying the plane and they're going to crash it into the Twin Towers, 9/11. Are you allowed to shoot down the plane? Because the plane from a halachic point of view, that plane and everybody aboard the plane, whether they want to be or not, they are the rodef. The rodef means that they're a pursuer.
Yeah, you're allowed to shut
You know, okay, you're posking. Boy, that's a quick pop. That's a quick sock over there. You know, I'm glad nobody asked you the question because it's not so. You're talking about killing a few hundred people, where you usually put a little more thought into that. Before we do. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's not like I forgot Yalav Yovo. Do I have to say Shemon Esrei again? It's something that's going to require thought. But this sort of question is if you're the ambulance driver and guy's blocking you from taking somebody to the hospital, he's a rodef at that point. That person is a rodef. Theoretically, again, there are other people who block highways, not just Hasidim. Let's use leftists. The leftists were protesting and blocking and doing a lot more than Hasidim have ever done. And then there's no question you could take them out. But that's even if you're not driving to the hospital. Just kidding. Certainly, if you have a right to be trying to save somebody's life, they're stopping you from saving somebody, so that person becomes a rodef. I don't think there's any question about it. That person is a rodef. That from a halachic point of view, I'm not talking about what the government's what the secular court would rule. I mean, in America, a secular court, if a guy breaks into your house and he gets hurt, in your house, he could sue you. It's like, I'm not responsible for I'm not responsible for all the foolishness. They're just ridiculous. The guy comes into your property and something gets hurt on your property, so then he can sue you. You have to be polite to burglars. Make it easier for them to burglar your house. Maybe you should leave out some coffee and a Danish for them in case they get hungry on the job. Have you ever heard absurdity like that? Here, this lunatic at Columbia University, they locked themselves in. And then these protesters in Columbia University, and then they said, "You should be sending us humanitarian aid. We're hungry." They occupied a building. Humanitarian aid. They should. What do you call it? They should torch the whole bunch of them. Humanitarian aid. That's what they want. Humanitarian aid. Something ridiculous. And don't worry, I'm sure there are going to be liberals who are going to tell you, yeah. Listen, she says we paid for a meal plan at the university, so you're supposed to feed us while we're vandalizing and breaking your university property. You should be feeding us. Do you hear what people could reach? You hear what the level people could reach? You hear what absurdity this could be? Right? So here you're talking about from a halachic point of view. Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure exactly how that ties into Kedoshim to you, but okay, since you brung it up. All right.
Not isolating,
What's that?
Be considerate, don't isolate yourself from community.
Don't isolate yourself from the community. Yeah. Okay, now one more question here. Look at the pasuk that said, the pasuk says Kedoshim Tihiyu. Anybody who just joined us, by the way, if you've joined us in progress, there's going to be a Parsha review. This Parsha review sheet is about 3 or 4 pages each week, Mirz Hashem, reviewing various points from the Parsha that we've done, some which we will have done, some which we won't have done, but they're various ideas about nothing complex, just very basic ideas in the Parsha, which would be ideal for the Shabbos table if anybody needs ideas, and they're available if you want to email me. They're available. Also, for those who are not aware, the Shidduch investigation questions for parents. There are 48 questions over here for parents who are struggling how to investigate a potential Shidduch, specifically looking for boys. I'm talking about this from parents of girls who are trying to find out about yeshiva guys. So there's a guide for if anybody's interested. This is available as well. And as always, the How to Run a Shabbos Table booklet is available. Okay, now, one more point here, where it says, Daber al kol hadas b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleim Kedoshim Tihiyu. You notice anything about that word? Anything about that word Tihiyu grab you? What does the word Tihiyu sound like? Kedoshim Tihiyu. Will be, which means what? Say, Moshe. Will be, what form is will be? Tihiyu. Future. Why is it Kedoshim Tihiyu in the future tense? Why is it Kedoshim Tihiyu? It should say Dabra Tzavas Be'Yisrael V'Amart Aleim. I guess there isn't really another Heyu. I guess it by definition is a future word. What else? How else could it be? Deborah was from other lamb. I'm not even sure how else you could say it other than using a future, but it is a future word. So I saw one of the Mefarshim says the reason it uses a future tense is to let us know that any time you think about Kedusha, there's more. Future means you could keep going there. Kedoshim to you. You could keep getting more Kedusha. There's no end to the Kedusha. Again, how did I translate Kedusha, gentlemen? Self-control. Self-control. There's no end to it. Obviously, there are other words that people would use. Dedication, devotion, concentration. That's all under the banner of Kedusha. But again, holiness has, the word holiness just gives it a sort of a beyond us sense. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But he's holy. Now, I was holy. So the Torah is telling you there are limitless levels of Kedusha. There are limited levels where a person could reach. I even saw a source that says that the highest person, obviously the person who reached the highest levels of Kedusha was Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? Now, in the future, when Mashiach comes, Mashiach's going to be even on a higher level. And there are those that say Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be the Mashiach. But even if Moshe Rabbeinu, who is actually the Mashiach, in the future, Moshe Rabbeinu himself will be on a higher level in the future than he was now. Because there's no limit to it. There's no limit to the levels of Kedusha that a person could achieve. Okay. So what's the next thing the Torah says? Ish imo ve'aviv tiro v'shabsosai tishmaru ani Hashem Elokechem. It's very interesting. Right after what do you call it? Right after it talks about the Kedusha, so what does it do? Get very practical. Honor your parents. Do you think of that in terms of Kedusha? Do you think of when a person doesn't sit in his father's seat, do you think of that in terms of Kedusha? Do you think of not contradicting your parents? By the way, this is the negative prohibitions. Earlier in Parshas Yisro, when it says, Kabed es avicha v'es, let's talk about the positive. You have to bring your parents food. You have to stand up for your parents when they walk into the room, stand up for your father. The positive is what you have to do. The negative is what you're not allowed to do. You can't call your parents by their first name. You can't contradict your parents. Can't sit in their seat. Can't get your parents upset. Blew that one, huh? Right? Can't get your Kedusha? Would you associate Kedusha with that? That's Kedusha. That's Kedusha. Ultimately, everything you feel, what's that? It's hard. It's hard. Huh? Self-control. Oh. It's the hardest level of Kedusha. Hey, let's get to the easy stuff. Let's talk about sacrifices. That's child's play. Honoring your parents, now we're talking. That's called the hardest mitzvah in the Torah. Yeah.
Rabbi, in the next it says, and my Shabbos shall you observe. Same sentence.
Right.
How's it
What's the connection? Excellent question, Elgio. What's the connection? Honor my parents and keep my Shabbos. I mean, why not, what relevance? Excellent question. Such a good question, the Gemara asked it. What's the answer? The answer is that the Torah is telling you, what happens if your father says desecrate Shabbos? You have to honor your parents. Now, what if your father says, okay, I want you to drive to the store for me on Shabbos? The Torah is telling you, you have to honor your parents only up to the point that they don't tell you to break Torah. Why? Because you have to honor your parents, but you and your parents have to honor me. So if there's a clash between your parents and Hashem, your loyalty is to Hashem. Therefore, it says, but keep Torah, keep Shabbos, no matter whatever. That's a classic, that's the example the Gemara uses. Why it uses Shabbos as opposed to other mitzvahs, there are different opinions, but that's what the Gemara says, that's why it's put over here. And the trick nowadays, and this is very common about Baalei Tshuva, sometimes they find these, have clashes with their parents, is you got to be diplomatic about it. Not so easy. Sometimes it's not so easy. What I found with Baalei Tshuvas, by the way, I found in my experience has been that where there was a good relationship with parents before the kid became a Baal Tshuva, There might have been some turbulence afterwards, but they basically worked it out. Where there was good communication between the parents and the kids and they had a good relationship, they worked it out. Where it wasn't a good relationship, it wasn't because he became frum that torpedoed the relationship. That didn't torpedo the relationship. It made a bad relationship worse. And it gave the parents more fuel for the fire. It gave him more fuel for the parents. But that's what I found. I found when the relationship was basically a healthy relationship, yeah, there were some speed bumps afterwards, but if they had a good relationship, they managed to work it through. And when the relationship was anyway problematic, so they had there was a case here in Israel. There was a case here in Israel of a guy who became a Baal Tshuva, and his parents actually formed a group of a support group for parents who have suffered the tragedy of their children becoming Baalei Tshuva. And actually and the father was on a rampage against his son. But the truth came out later that they had had a very rocky, stormy relationship before that point. This was just the fuel. The father was once debating somebody in a public debate with a rabbi, and he was railing about his son. He said, listen, my son, I go into my son's house now. They haven't got a book in the house. That's what religious people have, no books. So the rabbi looks at him and he said, are you kidding? You walk into any frum house, they got more books than anybody else. They've got more books than you do on the shelf. He's got shelves full of books. The guy says, yeah, but those aren't the books I read. Oh, so don't tell me he doesn't have books. But you don't approve of the books, therefore they're not considered books. It was very, very, very stormy. And eventually people, they were hanging their dirty laundry. The son becoming a Baal Tshuva became an excuse to hang the dirty laundry out. Yeah, but, if people are respectful of each other and the Baal Tshuva understands where your parents are coming from. Hey, a bit of a trauma over here. Especially the Baalei Tshuvas who start preaching to their parents. Because the parents, from a parent's perspective, say, hey, I raised you and educated you. When did we agree on this role reversal where you educate us? I also had I come from a modern Orthodox, from a modern Orthodox. My parents also became Haredi, but I became Haredi before them. And I messed up. I was very undiplomatic about it. And I was trying to project look how high and holy I am. And I messed up because I was very, very undiplomatic about it. I was very untactful. But Baruch Hashem, we worked it through. So the Torah is telling you, you can't break Torah for your parents, but you also have to make sure to maintain. It goes the other way too. Keep Shabbos, but honor your parents. All right.